Hello everyone, our topic this week was requested by Nicholson66, Jose Magia, and Spartan69. We'll be going over the God Emperor of Mankind from the Warhammer 40K franchise. And just as a quick heads up, if you have not already checked out our Chaos Gods video from the 40K franchise, watch it before watching the rest of this, it will help explain a lot.
So, first things first. Many of the Warhammer 40K storylines have been retconned to within an inch of their lives. This includes the history of the Emperor of Mankind. But we're going to present his story in as close to a currently canonically accurate state as we can. To begin with, the Emperor is a perpetual, which is a variety of nearly immortal beings in the 40K universe that are frankly one of the higher tier types of immortals we've encountered in fiction. Perpetuals are gifted with agelessness. They're also the next best thing to unkillable, able to regenerate from nearly any wound. Seriously, perpetuals can survive everything from being nuked to being fully disintegrated. In fact, it's rather unclear as to what exactly can kill a perpetual, but we know it's possible, as there are accounts of perpetuals being slain, but there are also accounts of other perpetuals being seemingly mortally wounded with perpetual slaying weaponry and yet surviving. Another bonus to being perpetual is that demons don't like to possess them. They're still possessible and suffer all the madness-inducing and normally fatal ill effects of possession, but when a perpetual host is killed, the demon inside gets royally screwed up and shunted out when the perpetual regenerates. So, demons seem to avoid trying to possess them as a rule. As a final note, the immortal nature of perpetuals inhibits the ability of others to see the future within causal proximity of perpetuals.
The Emperor was born around 8000 BC in what would become modern-day Turkey. In his original write-up, which if we understand correctly is technically no longer canon, but also has not had a replacement story made, so we're going to tell you anyway, the Emperor was the intentional product of a bunch of psychers. Psyker is the 40K term for psionic or magical people. Basically, if you can do the weird without tech help, you're a psyker. In the 40K verse, a realm known as the Void, again, see our last 40K video here, is the source of a psyker's power, as well as, among other things, the place souls go upon death. So, a cabal of hundreds of psychers on 8000 BC era Earth came up with a plan. They committed ritual suicide, all of them dying within minutes of each other and, using their psyker abilities, willed themselves to reincarnate. By virtue of their methodology, they managed to combine all of their essences to reincarnate into one being, and thus, shortly thereafter, the man who would become the God Emperor of Mankind was born, a perpetual with all of the psyker power of hundreds of psychers. Whether or not this origin is still canon, the Emperor is, far and away, the most powerful human psyker who has ever lived, and one of, if not the most powerful, mortal psychers of his lifetime. Over the next several thousand years of Earth's history, he would watch, grow, and attempt to steer the world's course towards order, prosperity, and survival against the forces of the Chaos Gods. Often this was from behind the scenes, but it's also implied that the Emperor was the true identity of such important historical figures as Hammurabi, Alexander the Great, and Napoleon, among others. So, not always so secretive.
Fast forward to the sci-fi eras of mankind's distant future, and humanity had evolved to the point where we were colonizing distant planets and establishing an interstellar society. This golden age of mankind rose and fell comparatively quickly, with the initially unified society of mankind spread across the stars, collapsing into isolated pockets of separate civilizations in the wake of a war waged between they and a machine race created by man that rose up against them. You know that age-old story. Humanity won, but their stability and infrastructure were destroyed, leaving them separated. Whatever empire, federation, or the like that they once had was no more. This is where the Emperor became the Emperor. What exactly he'd been doing during the collapse of society is unknown, though some accounts place a journey into the Void we'll cover in more detail later during this time frame. However, once everything had gone to crap, the Emperor decided that enough was enough, that trying to gently guide things the last several millennia hadn't worked. So, it was iron-fisted rule time. Starting with Earth, the Emperor conquered and unified the entire planet using a combination of military acumen, the creation of various super soldiers. If you've ever heard of 40K's Space Marines, their prototypes were first deployed here, and of course his overwhelming psyker powers. He then moved out from there, systematically conquering everything he came across and unifying them under his strict rule.
During this process, he did two important things. First, he instituted the Imperial Truth, which was a doctrine that abolished all religion and instituted a push for rationalism and science. This was the Emperor's incredibly weak plan to stave off the influence of the Chaos Gods, as he had realized that the worship of the Chaos Gods strengthened them, hence his plan to remove religious worship as a thing in its entirety, thinking that that would help save humanity. But he didn't realize that A, the Chaos Gods were also powered by emotions, and thus not being worshipped didn't necessarily weaken them, and that B, if people expressly worshipped something else, God, Allah, Odin, etc., the energy of the worship of those beings did not funnel over to the Chaos Gods, meaning that any religion, even false ones, actually helped mitigate the empowerment the Chaos Gods gained from humanity, to say nothing of the self-temperament most religions espouse. For example, the three most widely practiced religions on modern-day Earth all teach people to refrain from such things as murder, and the Chaos Gods feed on such actions as murder and the emotions caused by such violence. This plan was crude, but might have been effective, except for one thing. He didn't tell anyone why he instituted the Imperial Truth. He didn't say, hey, let's follow only logic and science because evil demon gods from an adjacent dimension gain power from your worship and literally want to eat your soul, which I don't want to happen. Because he didn't trust in the strength or judgment of humanity as a whole to not just bow down to such beings if their existence was revealed.
Second, he created his Primarchs. Sometime during or before the mess of humanity's war with machines and subsequent fall, the Emperor traveled through a portal into the Void. This would be the event we mentioned earlier. While inside the Void, the Emperor gained a tremendous power boost from the Chaos Gods. Sources differ or have been retconned as to exactly how, whether the power was stolen or even came from a different source. But what's important is that the Emperor gained immense additional power. He didn't just hold on to it, though. Instead, he created the Primarchs, 20-ish sons, to lead the Emperor's armies in the conquering and reunification of humanity. Secularly, the Primarchs were to the Emperor's super soldiers what those super soldiers were to normal humans. If the God Emperor of mankind is to be considered an actual god, then the Primarchs would be demigods. Importantly, they are also very similar, based upon the method of their creation, to demons. Demons are created when a Chaos God wills a fragment of their own power into existence as a thinking entity. The Chaos God loses that power and the demon runs around using it. While the Primarchs were genetically grown in a lab, the Emperor divvied up all that extra power he'd stolen from the Void between each of his Primarchs in a manner not unlike how the Chaos Gods empower their demons, investing them with additional might beyond that granted by the superior super soldier designs. The plan was that the Primarchs would be grown and trained under the Emperor himself to act as his generals and lords in the unification of the Milky Way galaxy. However, this plan was apparently so conceptually concerning that the Chaos Gods themselves stepped in and scattered the Primarchs to the far reaches of space.
Over the next few hundred years, the Emperor continued his Great Crusade, uniting and conquering every world in his path, and in doing so, eventually reacquired all of his Primarchs, each of which had grown on and often come to lead various worlds previously uncontrolled by the Emperor's Imperium of Man. The Primarchs mostly rejoined the Emperor willingly, championing his crusade across the galaxy. Unfortunately for just about everyone, the Emperor continued to fail at sharing important information, however, leaving his Primarchs just as blind to the existence of the forces of chaos as the rest of the Imperium. So while the Emperor turned his eyes to the future with plans to make things safer and easier for the Imperium going forward, he sent his powerful super soldier generals out into the far reaches of hostile alien space with no knowledge of the very foes who'd stolen them from him in the first place. This went about as well as you're probably guessing. Eventually, one of the greatest of the Primarchs, Horus, was tricked by the Chaos powers into turning against the Emperor. Horus drew away roughly half of the Imperium's overall might, including several other Primarchs, and began a civil war with the Emperor.
Which is bad in and of itself, but the problem was compounded by events relating to the Emperor's personal project. That plan for the future we mentioned a moment ago. In the 40K verse, FTL travel is accomplished by traveling through the warp, which is an incredibly dangerous process. Again, for more details on why, check out our previous lore video. Long before any of the modern races of the 40K verse were kicking around, an ancient alien species created a space sort of between our world and the warp called the Webway. which was essentially a warp highway that they used to travel at FTL speeds more safely and easily. By the time of the Imperium, their people had long since gone extinct, and much of the webway was in ruins or broken open and flooded with demons. But the Emperor figured out how to make his own version, and so he began forging the Imperial webway, with a gate on Earth itself at his golden throne. An ancient machine used for a number of purposes, including manipulating this gate to his new webway. As the Civil War broke out, one of the Primarchs tried to warn the Emperor psychically while he was inside the webway, which fractured the Imperial webway's seals, allowing the chaos of the warp and actual demons to seep in like water into a breached submarine. The eventual result being the Emperor was forced to sit on the Golden Throne for the entirety of the Civil War, using his psyker abilities to keep the demons that had entered the webway off of Earth, as no other being possessed the power and strength of will required to maintain his defenses of the portal to Earth, and apparently he couldn't close the thing. Twice, another person sacrificed themselves to power the Golden Throne long enough for the Emperor to leave, take care of something, and come back. The first, to allow him to enter the webway and purge many of the demons from it, allowing the last of his troops to escape, and the second time, when Horus finally fought his way to Earth itself to engage the Emperor in one-on-one combat.
This is one of the more retcon-heavy areas of the Emperor's history. The details change, but the overall narrative remains the same. The Emperor left his second-in-command, a powerful psyker in his own right, to run the Golden Throne, while the Emperor went out to face Horus in single combat. During this fight, Horus beat the crap out of the Emperor before the Emperor finally blasted Horus with energy so powerful that he literally wiped Horus's soul out of existence. No afterlife, returning to the warp, or coming back to life for Horus. What makes this whole situation complex is all of the retconning, as in older versions, the Emperor was beaten near to death because he couldn't bring himself to kill his favorite son, Horus, so he was holding back until the moment came when he was convinced that Horus was beyond redemption. But newer iterations of the Emperor depict him as seeing the Primarchs not as sons, but merely as powerful tools, which requires that the narrative of this fight change. However, newer lore hasn't reached this event yet, so why the Emperor still got beaten so badly in the currently retconned version of history is unknown. However, he still definitely got the crap kicked out of him by Horus, regardless of the reasons. We know this because the wounds the Emperor suffered in this battle are integral to the entire current structure of the 40K universe. Horus wounded the Emperor so badly that by all accounts he was actually dying, like seemingly for good. The Emperor was subsequently returned to the Golden Throne, just in time for his second-in-command to literally disintegrate from the strain of maintaining the Golden Throne's defenses against the Imperial webway. Once reinstalled back on the throne, the Golden Throne itself began to try to put the Emperor back together. It was enough to keep his body alive, but only just, and for the last 10,000 years, the Emperor has sat, effectively catatonic, on the throne, while his body ever so slowly deteriorates, and the Golden Throne slowly begins to break down. Even this state of being is made possible only by the daily sacrifice of as many as 1,000 psykers to help power the Golden Throne and maintain the Emperor's tenuous cling to life. Why waste as many as 1,000 lives a day to keep an old corpse only mostly dead? For the same reason they sacrifice as many as 1,000 additional psykers a day to the Astronomicon.
While his body has gone to crap, the Emperor's mind and will is still fully functional. For the most part, he doesn't communicate with the Imperium anymore, though there are exceptions and hinky fortune-telling that may or may not be influenced by him. However, he still to this day runs the defenses that keep demons from using the Imperial webway to step foot on Earth. And he's also the only mind powerful enough to guide the Astronomicon. Powering the thing takes the previously mentioned 1,000 or so psyker sacrifices a day, but making it function properly would still be beyond any mind less potent than the Emperor's. And the Astronomicon is arguably the most important piece of technology in the Imperium. The warp is dangerous and unpredictable. The Astronomicon acts, for those who know what to look for, as a sort of true north or giant lighthouse in the storming ocean that is the warp. It's literally the only constant landmark that can be found in the warp, and can be seen, if you've been trained, like the navigators of the Imperium, up to 50,000 light-years from Earth, giving the Imperium one of the most reliable space fleets in the galaxy. In a very real way, the Emperor still watches over and protects humanity, despite being a vegetable in a chair for the last several millennia. Ironically, in the absence of his direct rulership, the Imperium has descended into a theocratic state that literally worships him as a god, flying in the face of all he believed in. More ironic still, this investment of belief in him as a divine being has done as much or more to stave off the influence of the Chaos Gods as his imperial truth ever did. As a final note, some accounts seem to intimate the Emperor is in fact completely dead, and the husk of his body is merely keeping his soul attached and able to do its job, rather than being mostly dead, though for the life of us we can't see a functional difference there. And there are a number of theories concerning what will happen when the throne inevitably fails, ranging from the Emperor's becoming a true god upon his soul's being freed from the connection with his body thanks to the worship of the Imperium, all the way to the simpler and kind of hilarious idea that the throne is actually keeping him from regenerating perpetual style, and so when it fails, the Emperor will regenerate back to life and be up and ready to rule his empire once more.
And that's the God Emperor of mankind, jerk champion of order, and the one being the Chaos Gods consider their greatest threat. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave us a like and maybe share it with someone you know might like it. If you have ideas for videos you'd like to see us do in the future, do like Nicholson66, Jose Majea, and Spartan69, and let us know in the comments down below. If you'd like to see more videos from us in the future, be they lore, let's play, or other, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
In the meantime, this has been True Masters and Morons, signing off. Thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to see more like it, hit that subscribe orb.
To see our last Let's Play, click or tap the link on the right.
For our last lore video, click the link on the left.
Thank you to all of our patrons for making these videos possible.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.